Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another week of U.S. cyber history. This week, we are moving on to our next unit, which is the United States becoming a world power in the late 1800s. We're going to study basically foreign policy. And we're going to start with looking at the debate between being an isolationist country, meaning sticking to ourselves, or being more of an imperialist nation where we become involved in foreign affairs. So that's going to be the study for this week, and then we'll start to get into the Spanish-American War next week, and the following week, World War I, which will close out the marking period. So this week, the focus is going to be on the U.S. becoming a world power, like I said. Get this going here. There we go. So what you're going to do, I have a very basic notes sheet that is the next document in our Schoology page that goes with this lecture. So hopefully you are able to open the sheet and then follow along and submit notes. So first and foremost, the U.S. becoming a world power. Traditionally, we were an isolationist country, meaning that we avoided political and foreign economic entanglements, keep to ourselves. This was set up, the precedent was set up by George Washington. On his way out, he gave a farewell address warning the country to stay out of permanent alliances with the foreign world. Think back to, again, if you were thinking in those times, that made sense, right? Because we had geographic barriers. Today, obviously, we're in a global economy. We are globally connected. Not the case during Washington's time. Okay, so most of the 1800s, we were exploring the West, and we basically ran out of room. This changed American perception of boundaries and what were our boundaries. We hit the Pacific coast. Do we keep going is the idea here. So reasons for the U.S. becoming an imperialist nation, meaning we acquire land or establishing economic and political power over other nations. That's our basic definition, right? So keep in mind, it doesn't mean just conquering another land. We can establish an economic power over another nation. That also is an imperialistic view. So reasons for this and rationale. There's a bunch here. Okay. There's a few that we're going to discuss. The end of the frontier, like we talked about, but the biggest one and most important reason why the U.S. becomes this world power that we know it today was because of economic pressures. And mainly the idea being, guys, that we were producing more than we could consume. The second industrial revolution spurs this massive need to export. We're producing way too many items and not enough people here in our country to consume. So therefore, we needed that foreign market. So the end of the Western frontier, economic pressures. You can see some of the stats here between imports and exports and how they slowly increase for exports, in particular, when you look between 1899 and 1914. So prestige, the rest of the world, many of you probably remember from ninth grade, the scramble for Africa and the colonization period. That's what period we're talking about here in the United States. The difference being the U.S. did not get involved. So this is a weak argument for imperialism, but it's one of them, the idea of the U.S. gaining prestige and respect from other nations. This should look familiar. This was a chart most of you saw in ninth grade, but just showing you the different colonies of the different European powers. Notice there's no United States, right? So again, a political cartoon looking at Great Britain as a role model, but skipping forward here, racial theories, social Darwinism, extremely important here. The wealthy are strong and therefore have the right to rule the poor who are weak. This racial theory, taking Darwin's theory of evolution, if you remember survival of the fittest, right, from your science class, they take that and apply it to society. And all they're saying here is the wealthy can rule the poor who are weak. The U.S. as a stronger nation must dominate other nations who are weaker. So again, came up with, through this guy, philosopher Herbert Spencer, came up with this theory of social Darwinism that kind of influences people's opinions on expanding as well. Missionary zeal, the idea of taking Christianity into these uncivilized areas, also a reason, and then strategic needs, right? Looking for this idea of refueling stations. And this idea comes, guys, back then, ships ran on coal. So in order for the ship to make it around the globe, we would need stations, right? Like a gas station, think of it that way, but only it's stopping to get more coal to keep going on its journey. We didn't really have those output posts at this point. So this strategic need for refueling stations comes from this guy, Alfred Thayer Mahan. All right, so Mahan wrote this book, and Teddy Roosevelt reads it. Many of our congressmen and senators read it and buy into this idea of the influence of a strong Navy and therefore an expansion. So we'll see things like Roosevelt's Great White Fleet, the Roosevelt corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, things that we're going to be looking at in the future. All right, and there's a picture of Mahan, some of the battleships during that time period. I believe that's the USS Maine and the coaling station. All right, and again, he's calling for foreign markets and the need to build a Panama Canal. So anyway, that's it for the idea of turning the U.S. into a world power. We're going to look this week at a couple of assignments that will dive deeper into this. And then, like I said, next week, we'll move on. We are coming up on the end of the marking period. Failure notices already went out, so stay on top of assignments. All right, I'll see you guys soon.